Hi, everybody. You are listening to Judging Meghan with your host, Meghan Judge. This is take two of a podcast that we have been having some troubleshooting issues with and connection issues. I am very excited to talk to my old neighbor from growing up in Potomac, Maryland. I grew up in a community called Country Glen. And it was just I say all the time, I think I've said it on the podcast before, that I always dreamed I would go back and buy my house on Weatherwood Court because it was those times were so happy for me. My dad was alive. All of our neighbors were so great. And I'm actually have one of my former neighbors on today. But before I start going into that story, I want to remind you all that it is Mental Health Awareness Month. I do this podcast for the sole reason of spreading awareness that it's okay to struggle, that it's okay to talk about it, and that it's okay to feel sad, to feel bad, to get help if you need help. I know in the recent months, I've talked about really kind of struggling and getting to a place where I've been going through some things, and I try to talk about it. And the whole reason I do the podcast is so maybe if you are dealing with loss or grief or anxiety, depression, all of the things I talk about, that you feel like this is a safe space to come every week. With that being said, not to say that, but then the second point I was going to make is, if you do listen and you like the podcast, please share it with your friends and your family, and leave me a quick review if you are watching it on YouTube or listening on Spotify or Apple or wherever you're streaming. Okay, I'm done with that piece of it. I want to introduce my old neighbor, Sandy Malone. Oh, I used your middle. Who cares?
It's okay. It's okay.
I know you as Sandy Nelson, but now you're Sandy Malone, your married name. You are an author. You are the former star of a reality show called Wedding Island, which still plays on TLC, even though it aired years ago before Love Island, right? Because now everybody knows Love Island.
We are not Love Island.
You don't Love Island. Okay. Also, one thing I want to say is, if you're watching on YouTube, I don't ever watch myself because I don't like it, but I realized how much I talk with my hands. It's the weirdest thing. And I guess I can't see it when I'm in this little screen, but if you watch it on YouTube, I realized I talk with my hands like this all the time. And it's something I need to I don't know why I do it. But anyway, Sandy, welcome to the podcast. We've already done this intro, so welcome to take two.
Well, thank you so much for having me. This is a lot of fun.
It is fun. It's fun to see you after all these years. But also, I already shared the story and then we got cut off, but I'm going to share it again because it's pretty funny. When we were kids, Sandy was a little bit older than me, but we did Girl Scouts.
1 year older, lady.
Okay, well, whatever. You were the older one in the Girl Scouts. The point is that you were the older kid in the troop, in our troop, right? So we went on this camping trip, which I know is hard to believe because I'm not an outdoorsy kind of gal. And I broke your arm in a van that was being shut by, the old vans. You had to slam the thing and shut it manually. And you told me I broke your wrist. I thought it was your arm. But I also was under the impression that I got kicked out of Girl Scouts. But you said that's not true. So you share what you said.
Well, I don't remember you getting in any trouble at all. I remember me getting in trouble because I had my arm stuck through the door. Somebody told you to close the door, and you closed the door and my arm was in it. I'm not even sure you broke my arm. Dr. Holmes might have, when she was trying to get my arm out of the door, because it locked with my arm.
Who is Dr. Holmes? Was she our
She was a parent. Beth Holmes lived in our neighborhood too. And her mom was one of our troop leaders, and she was a doctor. She's the one who taught us how to make biscuits. I don't know if you remember that.
I don't remember anything. I really have a hard time remembering my childhood.
They had a blue-grayish Volkswagen van, and that's what you're remembering. And I'm not sure you broke my arm when you slammed the door. They might have broken it because it locked with my arm in it. So it took them a few minutes to get my arm out. And I'm not entirely sure it wasn't hurt when they were trying to get it out. So I've never blamed you, and you certainly shouldn't blame yourself. And I hope like heck you weren't kicked out of Girl Scouts for it, because that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard.
Well, I don't know if I was kicked out or I just used that story in my brain to make, because I remember my mom made me do Girl Scouts and
I'm
I
sure.
hated it. I don't like, I mean, I love being outside. I love being by the beach, but I don't like woods. I'm afraid of every like
I bet
ticks
you.
and
I
all
bet
that
you.
stuff.
I bet you don't know why your mom made you do Girl Scouts, and I bet I do.
What is the reason?
Your neighbor 2 doors over, and her last name is escaping me right now, but she was elderly and had dementia in the last years, and she used to walk.
Mrs. Oh shoot, she got dementia very young
Yes,
too.
and then she walked that path, and she cut through our yard on it, and she walked the same lap around the neighborhood all the time. Anyway, when she was younger, she was like the muckety muck for Girl Scout troops in the Washington area, and then specifically our area.
What is a muckety muck?
A high up person. She was important. And she ran the troops, and she was a big deal in the Girl Scouts of America. And so I'd be willing to bet that is why you got shoved into Girl Scouts, whether you wanted to do it or not, because every little girl in the neighborhood had to do it. Because I keep wanting to say Mrs. Fessenden or Mrs. Did it start with an F?
No, it's like was it Mrs. Foley? Is that wrong? I remember their kids were grown. By the way, everyone, this episode is just about country place, not Country
Place.
Glen. It was
Country
called
Glen-
Country Place.
Country Glen was our swim club.
Country Glen was our swim club before we started going to Congressional. We went to okay, and I lifeguarded. That was my first job I ever had. They hired me at 15 to be a lifeguard, which is terrifying. No, we could just literally do a podcast and call it Country Place because it was just such a happy. I mean, it's almost. I don't know if you remember it this way, but it was just such a happy period of my life. I mean, it really was. Growing up there and just the being so close in the snow. We would go to Wayside Elementary and go down the hill on our boards and go
Oh my
down
gosh, yes.
right, and go sledding. It was just a really special place. At that time, you could just go leave your house. My mom would open our garage and we'd all run out into the neighborhood and play like Ghost in the Graveyard and all those games. Do you remember that?
I loved your house, and I loved.
Well, we
your
were on a
family.
court, but you weren't on a court. So
Megan was on a court, and her backyard backed up to my next door neighbor's backyard, because the pathway led up right to the path.
yeah,
from
I
my
can
house to
picture
your
it.
house.
I literally can picture it perfectly. And my dream was, like I said, I don't even know if that was the first recording, but I always thought one day you knew me when I was young, but I always wanted to be famous.
Oh,
and
yes.
I thought I was going to,
And you are.
no, I'm not, but I wanted to be an actress. And I thought I would get married. I could still marry who I wanted from DC, but I would be by coastal. And then I'd go back to Potomac and I would buy my childhood home. But it didn't work out that way.
Well, you don't know where you're going to retire.
I mean, I'm not
You might
going.
decide you want to be bi-coastal and you need a home in the DC area. You never know.
I know, you never know. But I've always dreamed, in all the movies, you knock on your childhood door and I want to see my old room and how the house looks. One day I'm going to do it. I'm going to just knock on the door.
It's weird to go back to Country Place now because of the way they developed the whole front of the neighborhood.
Oh, it looks totally different, I'm sure.
I mean, where Megan lived and I guess where my house wasn't affected, but it used to be an old farm, and this area that was just a farmhouse and land when we were growing up. Now they've shoved as many houses as they possibly can in, but it is still one of the most beautiful areas. And it's so funny because when you tell people you're from Potomac, now people know where Potomac is because of Real
Because of the
Housewives.
reality. But again, it's not, they don't even live in Potomac. So it's like, it's not the way that they portray it on the show. But then when I go back, I was just back a couple months ago, it makes me emotional to go back into Potomac Village because I have so many memories of the Safeway again, sorry, everyone. This whole episode is just so if you grew up in Country Place, listen to this episode.
Megan, we have a Country Place Facebook group. I'll add you to it.
I think I'm
might be in
already
it.
in it.
We
I
don't
might
talk
have-
very often, but once in a while, I think we need to put a link to this podcast in.
I mean, I'm just going to say it was an incredible place to grow up. All of the neighbors, everyone was friends. Everyone's parents were friends. It was just a really great place to grow up and very wholesome and very storybook. I mean, obviously there were issues like anybody that had issues, but
Yeah. Do you
it was just
remember Halloween's in Country Place?
oh, they were the best.
We only trick or treated from like 5:30 to 7:30 or something, and then literally the entire neighborhood met at the bottom of Gregor's Croft at the
Where
court
the
by park,
McCarthys, yeah, and the Joneses lived,
and the
and there was
Ingrams.
and then there was a costume contest. Do you
A
remember that?
parade, and it was
Yeah,
by
parade.
age, and we got ribbons, and then every year they had apple cider and donuts for us.
It actually makes me like being a parent, being a mom. It's so different. My heart aches that my kids can't just, it was a different time. We could just leave our house. My mom, like I said, would open the garage and we'd just play in the neighborhood till it got dark. And you can't do that anymore, obviously, but that was the very best thing about growing up there.
I tell people they say, "How did you end up on Jekyll Island, Georgia?"
Uh-huh.
And we actually we lost our business and everything in Hurricane Maria and went back to our condo in the DC area. And we knew we didn't want to end up there. So we were kind of looking for our forever home. And my mom was in Jacksonville and had been diagnosed with Alzheimer's. So we ended up down here on Jekyll Island. But the reason I fell in love with Jekyll Island, Meghan, it is Bethany Beach, Delaware in 1980.
Yeah, that was the best. That's where we vacationed everyone in the summers. So if
Every
you're
summer.
from DC, you go to Rehoboth, Dewey, or Bethany. We
Or
went to Bethany too.
Or Ocean City if your parents were fun.
But we never went to Ocean City, but
Neither
we
did
went to Sea Colony in Bethany. That was our place.
My parents had a beach house in Sussex Shores, which was the first private neighborhood north of Bethany.
Okay.
So we spent all our summers down there. I worked as a lifeguard on the beach. And
I don't even remember. I mean, I don't remember any of this, so I love hearing it. I'm sure my listeners just love hearing the flashbacks of Country Place. But it's just it was such a great place.
Well,
to grow up.
my point about Bethany was you
Yeah.
got down there with your parents and they were like, bye. I mean, they didn't care. You could ride your bike all over creation. And as long as you were home more or less when you were supposed to be, you could do anything you wanted. And your parents didn't worry, and there was no reason to worry. And if you got up to no good, it would get reported to your parents by somebody else.
Somebody else's parent. I mean,
Yeah.
DC is very, because we
Small.
say DC even though we're from Potomac, it's the suburbs, but everybody's parent knew somebody knew somebody's dad and they went to Gonzaga or they went to Georgetown Prep or whatever. You and I went to Georgetown Visitation. Then I was actually politely asked to leave. I don't know if you know that.
You know what? I think I heard you say that in another interview, and I was like, why? Because you were legacy, so that makes it even weirder. Guys, I drove Meghan in carpool when she was a freshman in high school. No, you would have been a freshman and you would have been a no. Yeah, I didn't get my license, so you were in my carpool when you were a sophomore and I was a junior. But when I was a freshman, her older sister, Michelle, drove my carpool. So it was, we were all around each other. Everybody's
So
parents.
you must have been a freshman when Michelle was a senior.
Yep.
Because I wasn't, because we didn't overlap in school.
I was a freshman when she was a senior.
I mean, for my listeners, by the way, I mean, there's nothing I actually love more than going back down memory lane, because I'm pretty open about the fact that I have blocked out so much of my childhood. Especially the years that my dad was alive. So when people tell me things, I kind of go, I don't even remember that. I think it's a protective mechanism, and just being diagnosed with complex PTSD, I think that's very common with the diagnosis that you block out things. So that's when I see people like you or people tell me things, I love it. I could talk about it all day.
I was to say, I don't want to hurt you when I say this, but I have a lot of memories of your dad when we were children. Because
I love hearing that.
Your
my
dad
dad
was around.
the best. Oh, the best. Yeah.
Right. And my dad was in aviation, and he was gone the vast majority of the time.
Uh-huh.
And my older brothers were a lot older, and I loved your house. I don't know how much time you spent at my house. I don't actually have memories of you spending a lot of time at my house. All my memories with you are at your house. And there was always something going on. Sometimes we let your little brother Patrick play with us. Sometimes we ditched him. Sometimes your older sisters let us hang around with them. Sometimes they ditched us. But I remember, I don't know if we were fixing our bikes or roller skates or I don't know what we were doing, but I have visions of your dad and memories of your dad. out in the driveway with us. And I remember thinking, I wish my dad was home. And your dad was around just a lot, and my dad wasn't. And, you know, other friends in the neighborhood like Patty, Verdi, her dad wasn't around a lot. And your dad was really stellar. And when we lost your dad, you know, the whole neighborhood lived through losing your dad with you. You know, I mean, on the outside, we weren't one of the children in your family, but the whole neighborhood lost your dad. You know, and I think that you were my first friend of that age to lose a parent.
Yeah. I mean, it was, I mean, I can, now that you say that, our house though was also the house where I think it was the house where everybody went, you know, my dad was a clown and funny and fun, and everybody would come to the Judge house and hang out. So that's how it was growing up. It was a very special, special time. And, but I didn't have you on the podcast to talk about me, even though I love talking about myself. I'm joking, but I'm not. I want to talk about you, and you're an author now. You have 5 books out. You are a former reality show, which is so funny because if you could go back in time and see us as little kids and say, oh, one day obviously nobody knew what a reality show was, but it's just so crazy to see where we are today. There was no such thing as a reality show and a podcast at that point, obviously.
Well,
right?
Yeah, Meghan, I'm not sure if you were still at Visitation or if you knew about it or not, but I got in a lot of trouble for throwing parties in high school. And I didn't do them at our house because in Country Place, my mom and dad would have found out faster than the keg could have been, you know, tapped.
Yeah.
I used to rent hotel rooms and bring kegs. And
I think I was gone by that point because I had gone to boarding school after sophomore year. Yeah.
But you remember our Dean of Students, Mrs. Grimaldi?
Yes, I do.
I'm still friends with her.
Oh, I loved her.
And yeah, she's in her mid-80s now. And she is a hoot because she says, we should have known you were going to be a party planner. We should have known you were going to be a wedding planner.
So that's how you kind of were you always were kind of the person, I don't want to say yenta, but you kind of were. You were like setting people up and very into people's lives, and always you're perfect for the event planner. Also, your personality is so big that if anybody should have a reality show, it's you, right?
Thank you. But no, I mean, it was just, wedding planning was fun. You and I have mutual friends from high school whose weddings I helped plan while I was working in political journalism and then, you know, government affairs and public affairs in DC. And then I planned my own wedding down on Vieques Island. Puerto Rico had been a client, and I fell in love with the island because I was down there so much on business. And Vieques is a little bitty island located 7 miles off the eastern tip of Puerto Rico. And it is where the U.S. Navy used to practice bombing on the tip of the island. So I lobbied to kick the Navy off. The Navy got kicked off, and we got married down there, and we bought a vacation home down there because we loved it so much. And my husband was a SWAT commander in D.C. And when he retired, he made 30 years without shooting anybody or getting shot. And it was time to retire. And we said, what do we want to do next? Do I still want to be going to Capitol Hill 3 times a week? What do I want to do? Mm-hmm. And we said, forget this. We sold the house in D.C., we moved to Vieques, and we opened a wedding company because we thought it would be fun. Our own wedding down there wasn't a wedding planner on the island. It was very stressful. So we thought we could just give it a better experience to other brides and grooms. And it was fun. The weddings we'd help plan for friends were fun. And so we did all the budgeting. We sold the house in D.C. We really had to downsize to move to Puerto Rico and made the decision that 2 weddings a month would be like what I needed to get in order for the first year to sort of break even, do the budget. The first August, we had 19 weddings. It was crazy. And Bill thought he'd be retired and then, come out of retirement once a week to help me for a few hours, right? Instead, he ended up running all my setup and teardown crews. He ended up handling, the amount of stuff. There was no linen rental company on the island. There was a rental company, but too often they didn't show up or didn't show up with the right things. There was no lighting company on the island. So everything for wedding or tents, half the time we were helping set them up for big weddings. So we hired all the off-duty cops on the island. And because they were all so underpaid in Puerto Rico, it's really sad. But they would work with us, and we didn't have to worry about them going in and out of the villas, because you have to worry. You've got people that have rented these multi-million-dollar villas for the weddings. You've got to access the areas to set up the wedding. It was nice to not worry about people trying to steal pills from people's bathrooms.
Yeah.
But if you do watch Wedding Island, because it streams on Tubi and it's on all the Discovery platforms.
How long ago was that it was on?
Good Lord. It aired I want to say 2013.
So you were kind of in the very beginnings of the reality boom.
I was. And there wasn't anybody at the time to give me a hand and tell me what to do and what not to do. I mean, it all started because a friend of ours from high school's husband was in production. And we would come back every couple months for a couple days, and he would hear the stories and be like, this cannot be happening. Like, you cannot make up what brides and grooms do at destination weddings and what their guests do. I mean, my God, there's drama every time. And so my friend's husband emailed me and said, what do you think of me coming down to shoot a demo? You know, we could make a really cool show. I'm doing it on spec. I probably won't be able to come down for several months. And then it's going to take me months to edit it before we try to sell it because no one's paying me to do it. I got to do my job. But we'd really love to do it. I said, okay, sounds fun. And my husband and I are kind of laughing. Like, we always joke because people think wedding planning is glamorous. Your sister's a wedding planner. She could relate to this. It is not glamorous. We are the help. We're just trying to put a really beautiful event together in the process. And sure, you want to film us? Great. So I sent the producer a list of my weddings. He wanted to know what I had on the agenda with some bullet points about who's the bride, what's exciting about this wedding, right? I got a call, I don't know, an hour later. He's ready to buy a plane ticket. He said, in 10 days, do you really have a Russian bride on the north side of the island at 5 p.m. on June 9th and gay military police in uniform on the south side of the island at 6 p.m.? I said, yeah, my staff is not happy with me for that one. And he was like, yeah, I'm buying a plane ticket. We're coming down to film this.
No, it was good. I actually watched, I don't remember because it was a long time ago, but I do remember watching it. And you've always been like this funny character, you know? I mean, you just always have been that person. So it fits you and suits you perfectly. And there was so much drama. It was so listeners, go back if you can, because Sandy said it's still on. But I want to talk to you about the shift. So once that piece of your life was over.
We only filmed one season of the show.
Yeah.
But to give you perspective, the production crew, it was $4.95 Productions, and they came directly from filming Jersey Shore's final episode to us. So we had 70 people on the island, and we were planning real weddings with real clients. So we only did one season because we have real clients.
Yeah.
But our business was booming afterwards. We didn't really increase. We were already booked as much as we could be. And then I was writing the whole time. I always wanted to write. My mother said I wasn't allowed to go to college for journalism because I would end up writing obituaries on the overnight shift somewhere in the Midwest. She really wanted me to.
Such an interesting thing to say. Why would she say that?
Very specific. She wanted me to be a doctor or a nurse or a dentist. Or a lawyer, and she always said, so that you have a career to go back to if you need to. And when I was a kid, I didn't understand what that meant. You know, now I understand. Now I understand my parents' marriage was unhappy, that my mom stayed for the wrong reasons, that even though we were always hiding what was going on behind the doors in our house, that they were also hiding what was going on beyond doors in the house. And so my mom was very against it. She hid all the college catalogs, would throw out anything with journalism majors in them. It was like a war. But I applied to the top 10 journalism schools in the country, and I got scholarship offers to several of them.
Where did you end up going?
Freshman year, I went to Ohio University because it was the number 2 journalism school in the country. Mizzou, University of Missouri was number 1 at the time. I went out and visited it, and I was just like, this girl is not going to live in Missouri.
Yeah.
Ohio University wasn't a whole lot better, to be perfectly honest, because it is several hours from Columbus and everything closes at 5 p.m. except the bars. Yeah. And so it was a really tough one for me. But I double majored in journalism and aviation freshman year, got my pilot's license, and got into politics on campus because we weren't allowed to write for the newspaper at Ohio University. The paper's called The Post, and you're not allowed to write for it till you're like a junior. I got hired randomly by Governor Voinovich at the time to move up to Columbus and work on some youth political campaign stuff. So I did that and took a year off from school with a promise to my parents that I wouldn't take more time off. And by the time I had been in Columbus working for a year in politics, I had a boyfriend up there. I loved Columbus. My older sister graduated from Ohio State. I went ahead and transferred. And it was the best decision because right away I got writing for the Lantern, which was the daily newspaper there. It was a huge daily newspaper because it's a huge campus.
Mm-hmm.
And by the time I won 2 National Journalism Awards, Spot News Reporting, Investigative Journalism. And then I went on to become campus editor. And then when I graduated, I had a full scholarship to the Institute on Political Journalism at Georgetown. So I did that program through the Fund for American Studies and got a job offer at Campaigns and Elections magazine. From there, I went to, it was cool. And then, so my mom was all worried about the obituaries.
I never knew. It's so funny because it's like you kind of drop off when you move away and you move on. So I didn't know any of that. And it's also interesting because I am so interested in politics now. It's a totally different animal. And we're from the Washington, D.C. area. So many people that were, parents were politicians from our high school and still are, there's a lot of the politicians at Visitation's kids now because my sister's
when
a
we
teacher.
were there.
Yeah, was a teacher. She actually didn't retire, but she's moving out here.
Oh wow! I saw her post on Facebook about it.
Yeah, I'm excited. Okay, but let me ask you this because for the sake of time,
yes,
because I could talk to you all day. This could be a 5-hour podcast, but I want to know. So once you kind of shifted into, you did the politics piece of it, you had the reality show, you had the wedding business, you've lived all of these different lives. Then you had the horrible hurricane, the business kind of stopped, and then you started writing, correct?
Well, yeah, we were going along, booked 2 years ahead, and Hurricane Maria wiped out our business in one night.
Yeah.
But the entire time I was wedding planning, I never stopped writing. Because I went from Campaigns and Elections magazine to the Wall Street Journal. Okay. And I wrote the politics.net column at the Wall Street Journal, but I hated being in New York. So I got an offer back in D.C. I switched to the dark side and went to public affairs and public affairs, government affairs, more into the lobbying and PR realm. And when my husband retired and we switched to wedding planning, I never stopped writing. I wasn't not writing. When I was doing PR, I was writing all the time. But it wasn't my byline. I was writing things for my clients that would appear in the Wall Street Journal under their names. But I didn't care because I was still writing and I liked writing. And people were paying me to write. So, Mom. And my mother had by then, when I got to the Wall Street Journal, my mom was like, I may have been wrong about your career goals.
Yeah.
But she was very proud of me. But no, but I always kept writing. And when I was doing weddings, part of the way my company started out, I was blogging every day just about wedding stuff and island stuff. And I got hired by HuffPost and I got hired by Brides. I was writing for Brides 3 times a week. And Condé Nast, that was fun because I got to go to all the Shishi little islands and I got to stay at the Four Seasons on somebody else's tab for a week and they flew me there on a private plane. I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
It was a lot of fun. I was writing the whole time. And when our business got taken out in one night and we realized our hospital was gone. They had no idea when power would come back. It ended up taking 17 months to restore power in Vieques. I had to call every single client and say, we're done. I'm sorry. I don't know if I'll be reopening. I don't think I'll be reopening. And thank goodness we didn't because 2020 rolled around and I would have had to do the same thing all over again with my clients. I don't want to cancel 50 weddings again. That was horrible. I cried with every bride. And so there was an opportunity it was funny. I was like, okay, I got to find, I'm going to write. I'm going back to writing full time. And we were up in our condo in the DC area. So I saw a job listing for an editor of a police publication. Well, I'm a cop wife. Not quite a subject matter expert at that point. Now I am. I was hired by Blue Lives Matter, which became the Police Tribune. And I was the editor of the nation's largest law enforcement publication for 7.5 years until it was sold, merged into other things. And that happened shortly after we moved down here to to Jekyll Island. I got to get my islands straight. We moved down to Jekyll Island because my mom had Alzheimer's. She was in Jacksonville, and we were spending half of our lives on I-95 running down to deal with emergencies. And so when we moved down here and the other publication was transitioning, I had to make a decision. Did I want to go to another law enforcement publication? Did I want to go back to political writing? Or did I want to write all the book ideas that I had had in my head for 20 some years? Because I just never had time. I mean, I have always had a backlog. I ghost wrote books. My first book I wrote was traditionally published by Skyhorse Publishing in New York. It was a DIY wedding book that came out in, I don't know, 2015 or 16. And it did okay. But it was very much a how to plan a wedding, as I felt like I was writing the world's longest blog. I'd been, it was the same topic I'd been writing about for years. And after that, I got all these offers to ghostwrite for other reality stars. So I got to ghostwrite a bunch of other books for major publishing houses. And it's amazing how well they pay you when nobody's supposed to know you wrote it. So I like ghostwriting. It works really well. But there were also some fun ones I can talk about. Like I wrote books for Monique Samuel's Real Housewives of Potomac. And that was an interesting experience because her house, I don't know if you knew Billy.
I don't watch. I don't watch. It's the one that I don't watch because just being from there, I don't feel like
it's not. I mean, none of the women live in Potomac except but two of them. But Monique Samuels is one of the ones. And her husband, Mark Samuels, was a Redskin. And he was a Redskin for his entire career. He never switched teams. And when he retired, they moved to this house in Potomac in, what is the neighborhood called? It's Potomac Falls on your right when you're headed, when you're on.
Okay. And so you ended up writing her book.
I ended up filming with Bravo while we were writing her book. It was hilarious. And
I have to go back and watch.
I was on the cutting room floor. Thank goodness. There's nothing interesting about watching somebody talk to their ghostwriter. I mean, honestly, it was like.
So you ended up like ghostwriting all these books
all
for
kinds of
reality stars. And then let's cut to.
I got here. I made the decision. And I said, I'm going to try this. Let's see what happens. And when we were driving down here, I'd got to buy our house. I got a story idea in my head, but I said I wasn't allowed to write it until the house was unpacked and I had time to do it. Because for somebody who really loves to write, it is a guilty pleasure to sit down and just write creatively. And I'm not allowed to do it yet. I don't have time yet. And when things changed at my publication, I could make the decision all I wanted to do was write. And I pulled out that outline I had written the night that we drove down here. And I started writing. And within a couple of weeks, books 1 and 2 in the Gem of the Golden Isles series were finished. The first book was called Escape to Jekyll Island. It is not autobiographical, but I do draw from all my life experiences, especially planning more than 500 weddings for crazy people. So the main character is a young wedding planner who loses her job in a hurricane. So she goes home to Jekyll Island and starts over, ends up launching her own wedding company, and she reconnects with childhood friends because she grew up there after her parents died. And she is doing really well. And one of the childhood friends is a smoking hot state trooper now. So there's some sparks going on. Everything's going right. She gets some big clients and then weird things happen. Flowers disappear. Vendors won't work with her. She doesn't know what's going on. Turns out somebody's got a grudge. Now, spoiler alert, there's 5 books in the series, so she survives the first one. But there's, they're not romance books. They're more rom-com because you're going through the life with a wedding planner with the crazy things these clients do. And you cannot make them up, Meghan. I mean,
so let me ask you. So you write all these books, right? And then because the tie in the mental health piece, which is what my podcast is about, you decided that you wanted to actually write your latest book, which is about the loss of your mom and dealing with the caregiving piece and all of that stuff. So how did you kind of make that shift?
We, as I said, we moved down here because my mom had Alzheimer's and she was in Jacksonville, not far away, caring for my stepdad who was in hospice. And we provided a lot of support. And we moved down here, and a couple weeks after we moved down here, my mom collapsed, very ill. And then my stepdad died. So everything went upside down. It went from coming down to help mom to my mom couldn't be alone. And she was mad about it. And her meds were all messed up because she hadn't been taking them properly. It was an absolute worst case scenario. We had to put her in assisted living pretty much against her will. It was a nightmare. I was moving my house, trying to empty her house, moving her into assisted living, dealing with all the things. And I had uncles who hadn't seen my mom in God knows how many years, who came down and tried to challenge my guardianship of her, which was really odd because mom had chosen everything and everything was okay. My mom was a nightmare for those first, say, 3 months after we put her in assisted living. We moved her up here, St. Simon's Island, which is right next door to us. And we saw her every day. We did things with her multiple days a week. And it's a lovely, lovely assisted living facility. But she was PO'd to be there. She was mad. How dare we make this decision? And my mom knew she was getting Alzheimer's. My grandma had Alzheimer's, and my mother took care of her. My grandma died in her 90s at Rockville Nursing Home. And before that, my great Aunt Helen, we went to visit her once a week every day till I was 15, or every week.
No,
till I was
it's
15.
definitely. And I have Neil K. Shaw, who was just on, who's coming back on. Dementia, Alzheimer's, depending. I mean, it's on both sides of my family, and it's a horrible thing to see somebody like your parent, go through. I've just heard so many stories, and I have a very close friend that's dealing with this right now with her mother. I wonder, when you talk about this, it's you're fortunate, right? Because you could afford to put your mom in an assisted living situation.
I was very fortunate because my mom had planned ahead.
Okay, but think about how many people, I was talking about this last week, that don't, and we're going into a crisis of, it's so scary what's happening, but it's so common too that, we're left now with these aging baby boomers.
I'm hearing
putting them in place like assisted living, and they don't want to be there. I mean, this is also common, right?
But also, I'm hearing from friends our age whose parents who are still up on I'm in the South. Everything's different in the South. But people who are still in the DC area, who are up in New England, New York, they are paying $25,000 a month and up for different levels of care. Now, we were lucky. It was significantly less down here for probably more than what you're getting up there.
Yeah.
But my mom, thank God, had long-term care insurance. But she had it because my grandmother had Alzheimer's and Aunt Helen had Alzheimer's. My mom knew what was coming, and she put her estate together properly. I think in 2018, she realized she was really losing it. And she had everything put together properly. It's just, it doesn't matter if you put your estate together properly. People can challenge it. They may not win, but that doesn't mean they can't make a mess legally with it. We were lucky. I won. Everything went okay with mom. My mom got her marbles back about 3 months after she'd been so ill. She'd had a series of UTIs. And the last 3 years of my mom's life, she did great. She had a boyfriend, Meghan. His name was Steed, like a horse. He was 92 when she met him. He lived down the hall. I mean, leave it to Robin. She becomes the social butterfly. And my husband always joked that you could always spot my mom when you walked into, it was called Vitality Living, when you walked in there, because she was the only brunette in the entire dining room. I mean, that woman never let the gray sneak in. Yeah. And, so I always thought I would have my mom until she was in her 90s. The whole thing we went through with my family when my mom was first needed to be put in assisted living scared me because I thought it was going to be that level of stress until my mom was 95. You know what I mean? And all of a sudden last fall, I was out on a book tour and I got a phone call that my mom had had a seizure. And it was when all the air traffic controllers were messed up because of the budget stuff. Shocking. And it's all affecting everybody. Yeah. So we drove back really fast. And I had a friend meet my mom at the ER and wait with her. And it turned out she had a whole lot of brain tumors, as well as tumors other places in her body. She wasn't in any pain. She was not, they told her she had tumors, but she didn't remember that she had tumors a few minutes later. And it was so extreme. We went down to Mayo. We got second opinions because that's where her doctors had been in Jacksonville. And they basically said, we can't even biopsy her. She might not wake up. And so I got about another week with my mom, and then it started to hurt. And then we went to hospice, and then it was over. But I never got to say goodbye or tell her the things that I wanted because she didn't know she was dying. And I didn't want to. I'm sorry. I didn't
No,
want
I
to
cry
scare
every
her.
podcast. It's
I did-
okay. It's okay. And it's obviously, Sandy, it's okay. I mean, I cry often on the podcast. And I think what you're talking about is so common for people are in our age 40s. You know, you're seeing your parents age, and it's awful. I mean, my mom's still very fit. She does Pilates 5 days a week, but she was just out here, and it's, you know, we have conversations, and I realize I don't know how much longer I have her. And the pain of, if you're close to a parent, I don't think it matters what age you are, that pain of loss of a parent is so significant and hard, right?
Yeah, it really is. And it was unexpected. I mean, I knew she had Alzheimer's. I'd already lost her to Alzheimer's.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the mom that I called for advice, I'd already lost to Alzheimer's.
Mm-hmm.
But we had hit this really good sort of, I'll just call it a separate piece in the Alzheimer's space. She adored my husband, Bill. She loved it. She all the time would say he's my favorite human. And I'd be like, thanks, Mom. But that was the biggest compliment in the world, that she loved my husband so much. And he would take her for hair appointments. They'd get their hair done. And I know. And then they'd go out to lunch together. And initially he started doing it because when I went to go do things with her, if I had to be in the car with her, excuse me, if I had to be in the sorry. If I had to be in the car with her, I was the complaints department. Initially, everything was fine after a few months. But she had had a number of UTIs. I don't know if you know this, but
It's very common. It's
right,
very
but when
common.
the elderly
Yeah.
get UTIs, it makes them very loopy in the head.
Mm-hmm.
If you do not have dementia or you don't have Alzheimer's, antibiotics will clear that up. But if you have dementia or you have Alzheimer's, it hooks your brain. And so my mom lost something crazy, like 50% of her cognitive ability just from how bad this infection was over a period of a month. And it took months for her to get halfway back up to where she'd been before she got sick. So we had a separate, sort of a very good place. You know, my husband got really close with her because she never yelled at him. She would only yell at me. So when she was mad, he just did as much of it, of the errands and the what can I take her to do as he could, because he liked her. And then when she wasn't as mad at me, I could go back to doing that stuff. But I thought I was going to have her until she was in her mid-90s, because that's when Aunt Helen died and that's when Grandma died. I didn't know she was sick. And even her primary care, there were a bunch of tumors in her lungs and other places. They couldn't, do anything at that point. And the doctor said, well, Sandy, my God, I feel terrible. I mean, we never even did a chest x-ray because she never had a cough or a cold.
Mm-hmm.
She wasn't sick.
Yeah.
I mean, it was awful. And so you will like how this book came about. My mom died the day before Thanksgiving, and I had a book come out that Friday, on Black Friday, and I couldn't stop it. The Jekyll Club Hotel was throwing my book launch. People were invited. Money had been spent. Mom and I had been talking about it when she was in hospice. She was actually the hospital before hospice. She didn't talk much once hospice, but she said, my mom didn't know she was dying, but my mom's whole, if I can't go, you do not skip it. Do not reschedule. She wanted me to go buy dresses for her to try on in the hospital to wear to my book launch. And so I had to get through that book launch a couple days after she died. And then December just kind of stunk in general. It's just a rough time to have your mom die. And I was not handling it well, because for the first few weeks I had to stuff it all down to sign books, places that I had promised to sign books. And if people knew who I was, they'd say, hey, how's your mom doing? Because I hadn't publicly announced she died. Mm-hmm. And then you got to be like, Mom's dead. Do you want book 5? I mean, it's hard. You got to hold it together. You can't cry with that person because there's 6 more people in line.
Yeah.
And I got through it, but I felt like, you remember those cans that you open and a snake jumped out? You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
I felt like somebody had taken me and squished me down. And I was holding everything in. And I still haven't done that big bellowy cry for 2 hours that I need to do. Although Mother's Day, I got closer to it than I have. But I had to suck it all in, and then I just couldn't process it right. And I struggled with a few panic attacks, and that's not something that has been a part of my life. And and it was bad for a couple weeks right after mom died. And I was scared. It was so dark. And I went and talked to my primary care, and he said, let me refer you to somebody. He's like, you need a cognitive behavioral therapist. You need somebody to help you get through this, because every time I talked about my mom, I'd start to cry. And I know it's not believable right now, but now I can kind of talk about her without crying. It's just not right in this context. But so I found a therapist, and she's really nice, and I liked her. But I also had a shoulder replacement in January. So I was in this immobilizer out like this for 6 weeks.
Oh
And
my gosh.
yeah, and so the therapist tells me to write a letter to my mother. Okay, well, I can't write anything. And I told her I'd have to postpone that until I was allowed to use my hand. And I got permission to type after a couple of weeks. You can type before you can actually write. And I couldn't type a letter to my mother, Meghan, because my mom was such an etiquette queen. She would not have appreciated a typed letter. She just wouldn't have. She would have said, a letter like this, you handwrite. And I didn't want to type it. And I was fiddling around on the computer, and I'd been kicking around an idea, and I started to write. And when I talked to the therapist a couple weeks later, she said, did you start the letter? I said, no, but I wrote a 70,000 word book. And she's like,
wrote a 70,000 word book in how long?
oh, like 2 weeks, because I took longer than usual because of the topic.
I don't know how. I mean, I'm writing a book right now. I don't know how you do that, but I think writing is therapy then.
Oh
So
yeah, for
you,
me,
yeah.
well, I just love to write. I mean, I love to write. Like, hey, Meghan, when you need a biographer, call me, because I love to write about interesting things. But in this case, the story is fiction. It is not. This is not a true story. What I did is I worked in the experience I'd had into a fictional story, and the story is about a societal patriarchal society family, where money and influence are more important than anything else. And they're mean. They're not nice. And they're unkind to a lot of the women in the family in a different way. And so the story is told through the voices of 3 generations of women in this same family. And the first 2 have Alzheimer's. And you see how the cycle repeats, the violence, the mental health issues. And you see like how 2 generations of it repeat itself. And you see it gets to the 3rd generation, and she puts her foot down and puts a stop to it as much as she can. And for me, the pieces of dealing with somebody you love and Alzheimer's, and I wrote my mom's death in. That was really hard. But the story is fiction. I mean, the story is fiction, with the exception of the fact there are parts of it that reveal my experience. It was so very hard. It was so hard. And it's still hard. And it's going to be cheesy, but my girlfriend had this made, and it is a necklace.
What is it?
It's my mom's fingerprint.
Oh, I love that.
The week she was dying, my friend Diane is a retired nurse, and she took the fingerprint at Hospice and had the necklace made. And I don't know if you can tell a picture, but you can actually feel her fingerprint. So I keep trying to tell myself that's my little connection, because people keep saying, has your mom come to you yet? Or, have you had a sign? No, I haven't. But I've never had those kinds of signs.
It doesn't mean they're not there. I mean, I talk a lot about signs. The someday you'll be surprised. You might get. I mean, I tell a story about my dad coming to me 30 years after he passed away. So I believe they're with us. We can't see them, and sometimes they send us signs that we don't even know that that's a sign. It could be something that you don't even know. So, I mean, for the sake of time. Yeah. I'm so appreciative of you sharing all of this, because I know it's really, really hard and fresh. But the biggest part of what you're sharing is your truth. And, you've had a life that's, your life alone of going through all these things is, could be a movie. But I think it's important that you bring to light, and when this book comes out, which I'm going to share in a second, what it's like to deal with the generational piece of this disease, which is, they're cutting research on. And this is stuff that we really need to bring to light, because we're going to end up having more people in assisted living and more caregivers that can't afford to be caregivers and hold down jobs and all the things that I talked about in last week's episode. So I think it's important that you share this story. And from somebody that's been in therapy, in and out of therapy for most of my life, I think just continue. My advice to you is to continue to remember your mom and to continue to share your stories and the memories and the funny things. And, you know, that's putting light to it. Grief is going to last you the rest of your life. It will. It's just part of your life now. It's a new piece of your life that you're grieving, and you're going to carry it every day in different ways. I don't know if you remember. Do you remember my best friend, Julie Ellis?
I remember when Julie died.
Yeah. So I know that was like later, and I had been away at boarding school and all of that, but I still grieve. She was my very best friend. I still grieve her every single day of my life. I think about her, in little ways. So I think it's healthy and good for you to talk about your mom.
I think so too.
I'm so appreciative. And also, like, what an amazing trip down memory lane. It's not, thank God for technology. Here's the good part of technology, is that you can connect with somebody you knew from your childhood. It's very special to see you.
Well, you should bring your husband and girls out to Jekyll Island, because it is Bethany Beach in 1980. You can ride. We have bike paths that circle the whole island. We have no stoplights.
Wow.
I know. There's only 600 residents. The whole island's a state park.
It sounds magical.
And we have a
Wait,
lovely
Sandy,
guest house.
before we close,
Yes.
tell everybody where they can find you and where they can get your book.
All right. Well, the Gem of the Golden Isle series that starts with Escape to Jekyll Island is available on Amazon, bookshop.org, Barnes & Noble. You can also get it on my website, sandymalone.com. The new book that I was talking about today that's coming out this fall is called Thicker Than Blood. And I will be sending you all kinds of info when I know it's coming out, because I am late getting things back to my publicist, so I don't know what day it's coming out. But I know it's this fall. So we've also got a new series that should hopefully start rolling out before the end of the summer called Under the Oaks. And that is a crossover series from my Jekyll series to St. Simon's Island with a wedding planning company over there. So there's lots of different things to look forward to in the coming months.
Well, I'm very proud of you.
I'm proud of you too.
I hope you're proud of yourself, because if we could look at our little selves in Girl Scouts and see where you are today, I think you would be your mom smiling down, and it's pretty special to see you. So thanks, Sandy. Everyone, just as I said before, I really am trying to do more episodes about caregiving and mental decline as in the aging population, and caregiving, Alzheimer's, dementia. So if you ever want to come on and share your story, or somebody that wants to talk about this, I think there's so many people that are dealing with this, and it's their reality, and it's really, really hard to deal with. I'm always looking for guests to come on to talk about this. You don't have to be a big political figure or a doctor at NIH or any of those things. I love talking to people like my old neighbor, Sandy, from growing up. So thank you so much, Sandy. And everyone, remember, you matter, your story matters. Keep going.
Judging Meghan with Meghan Judge.